Mr. Chairman, this issue has been referred to previously by Congressman Denham, and it's an area that, frankly, as we've continued to provide new science in determining the various causes and effects of the decline of the salmonoid species in the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers, we've been able to basically determine that, in fact, there are a number of causes that have resulted in the decline. One of those causes is predator non-native fish that were planted into the river systems decades ago that have impact. These are striped, largemouth, smallmouth bass, in addition to white and channel catfish. All have been introduced into California's waterways, and these species prey on these other native salmon and smelt-like fish. But unfortunately, these other fish are protected by the Endangered Species Act. Unfortunately, little is known about the abundance, the distribution, and the predation rates of many of these invasive species. However, one thing we do know is that an abundance of invasive predators and rates of predation on protected species can be incredibly high. Let me give you an example. The Turlock Irrigation District about 4 years ago planted about 1,000 salmon smelt, salmonoid smolts with micro transistors. They wanted to track how well they were doing on a fall run salmon that they have on the Tuolumne River. And in fact, they released them. And a month, 6 weeks later, they got high emissions from the emitters that were on these baby salmon. And they went and they thought, we got a lot of salmon there. And they identified 5 holes where there were a lot of fish. They put underwater cameras down there. And what they found were a lot of striped bass. The striped bass had consumed the smolt, the baby salmon, and digested them, and then in the process digested the micro transistor, and it laid on the gravel. It was an expensive experiment. It cost the Water District almost $1 million. But there was a real problem with predation, and this is why the CalFed legislation passed by the Congress provided an authority for invasive species control program to begin to address this complex part of the problem of predation. Unfortunately, little action has been taken to implement the authority. My amendment builds on the work on the predation of this already in the bill that Congressman Denham has placed as it relates to the Stanislaus River. So it complements that effort and mandates the reclamation implement a series of pilot projects consistent with the existing authority under CalFed to address the predator control programs and report on how the results of these projects impact endangered species recovery. It's simply mind-boggling to think that we, as a result of regulatory controls aimed at recovering endangered species, are unable to move significant amounts of water to places where we need it at certain critical times when it's needed because of the impacts, what I would think would non-intended impacts. At the same time we are restricting water movement to protect these species, we allow a vast number of these same species to be eaten. In other words, the non-native species eating the native California salmon predator fish when these species aren't even native to California. At a recent San Joaquin River Restoration science meeting, it was reported that more than 20,000 invasive predators were captured over 2 years in nets aimed to capture juvenile protected salmon. Think about that. 20,000 invasive predators were captured over 2 years in nets aimed to capture juvenile protected salmon. In one tagging study, it was shown that the majority of these collected predators ate salmon. They can tell that by, well, you know how they can tell that, with each predator eating up to 6 juvenile salmons. There are models that predict that striped bass predation on juvenile Chinook salmon are out-migrating through the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta significantly increases the risk of the endangered species becoming extinct. So there are a host of studies on the Sacramento, on the Delta, that indicate that we need to do this. Why does the federal government and the Central Valley Project have a policy trying to double the population of these invasive predators? I think that ought to be a question we ask. Why does the state of California have a policy of limiting the amount of these invasive predators that fishermen can catch? I don't get it. The most important thing, though, is that we can recover endangered species is to determine the serious impact on predation. This amendment would allow us to do that. I request the support of my colleagues.
Refrain from making a comment on that straight line, so can everyone else. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. It's agreed to. Next amendment before us